What if the most powerful shift you will ever experience has already begun, and the only reason you have not recognized it yet is because you were expecting it to be loud? You were expecting disruption. You were expecting some unmistakable sign from the universe that everything was about to change. But that is not how quantum shifts work. They do not arrive with thunder. They arrive with clarity. A strange, quiet, almost unsettling clarity that settles into your awareness like morning light entering a room you forgot had windows. And right now, something in you knows exactly what I am talking about. There is a feeling you have been carrying recently. Not anxiety, not excitement, something else entirely. A sense that the ground beneath your reality is shifting. Not violently, but deliberately, like tectonic plates moving miles beneath the surface, rearranging the foundation of everything you thought was fixed. You cannot point to it. You cannot prove it, but you feel it. And here is what no one tells you. That feeling is not your imagination. It is not wishful thinking. It is not the byproduct of watching too many videos about manifestation or consciousness. That feeling is your quantum GPS activating. It is the most sophisticated navigational system in existence, and it lives inside your body, inside your nervous system, inside the electromagnetic field generated by your own heart and brain. And it has been trying to guide you towards something for longer than you realize. But you have been taught to distrust it. You have been conditioned to override it with logic, with external validation, with the opinions of people who cannot feel what you feel. And so the signal kept pulsing, and you kept ignoring it, mistaking the most important data you have ever received for mere emotion, mere gut feeling, mere intuition that does not count because it cannot be measured by someone else's instruments. That ends today. Because what I am about to walk you through is not a theory. It is the mechanics of how reality reorganizes itself around a shifting consciousness. And more importantly, how your body detects that reorganization before your mind can comprehend it. By the time we reach the end of this, you will not just understand your intuition differently, you will trust it. And that trust is the very thing that collapses the wave of possibility into the life that has been trying to reach you. Let us start with what is actually happening when you feel that strange sense of knowing. That quiet certainty that arrives without evidence. That calm conviction that something is about to change, even though nothing in your external circumstances has moved yet. Most people experience this and immediately dismiss it because they have been trained to believe that real knowledge requires proof. That understanding must come through data, through logic, through external confirmation. But quantum mechanics reveals something profoundly different about the nature of knowing. In the quantum field, before anything becomes real, before any particle takes a position, before any outcome solidifies into what we call physical reality, there is a phase of convergence. Probabilities are not static. They are constantly shifting, overlapping, interfering with one another. Millions of potential outcomes exist simultaneously in superposition, and most of them remain weak, scattered, incoherent. They flicker in and out without ever gaining enough stability to collapse into form. But every once in a while, something changes. One probability begins to strengthen, not because some external force pushes it forward, but because the conditions align. The informational structure of that possibility becomes internally consistent. Its wave function gains amplitude. It stops fluctuating wildly and begins converging toward a specific pattern. And here is the part that changes everything. That convergence does not happen in isolation. It happens in relationship with an observer, with consciousness, with you. Your awareness is not separate from the field of probability. You are embedded in it. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body. Your brain produces electrical patterns that interact with the surrounding informational environment every single second. You are not watching reality from the outside. You are participating in its formation from the inside. And when a probability that is aligned with your evolving identity begins to strengthen, your system feels it. Not as thought, not as emotion in the way you typically understand emotion. As coherence. As a subtle but undeniable sense that something is organizing itself around you. That is what intuition actually is. It is not a mystical gift given to special people. It is not a vague feeling that sometimes gets lucky. Intuition is your nervous system detecting coherence in the quantum field before that coherence becomes visible in physical reality. It is an early warning system, except it is not warning you of danger. It is alerting you to arrival. Something is arriving. Something you have been aligning with, consciously or unconsciously, is gaining enough coherence to collapse into your lived experience. And your body knows it before your mind does, because your body operates on a fundamentally different timescale than your conscious awareness. If this is resonating with you, if you can feel the truth of what is being described here, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. Let me explain what I mean by that. Your conscious mind processes roughly 40 to 50 bits of information per second. That sounds like a lot until you realize that your subconscious mind, the vast network of neural processing that operates beneath your awareness, handles approximately 11 million bits per second. 11 million. That means the overwhelming majority of what your system knows, it knows without telling you. It processes patterns, trajectories, subtle environmental cues, electromagnetic fluctuations, relational dynamics, all of it running constantly in the background, like an operating system you never see but always depend on. When that subconscious processing detects a pattern of increasing coherence, when it recognizes that probabilities are converging in a specific direction, it sends a signal upward. That signal does not arrive as a detailed report. It arrives as a feeling, a sense, a knowing that has no logical explanation because the logic is happening 11 million bits at a time in a language your conscious mind does not speak. And what does that signal feel like? It feels like your intuition getting louder. Not louder in the way that anxiety gets louder, with urgency and pressure and the desperate need to act immediately. Louder in the way that truth gets louder. Steady, persistent, calm, returning every time you try to push it away, repeating itself without drama, present without demanding. That is the signature of genuine intuitive amplification. And it is the clearest sign that a quantum shift is approaching your timeline. Now here is where most people unknowingly sabotage the very shift they have been praying for. When this amplification begins, when intuition starts getting clearer and the old patterns start losing their grip, there is a window. A critical window where the probability is gaining coherence but has not yet collapsed. It is organizing but not yet manifest. It is real in the field but not yet real in the physical. And during that window, your response determines everything. If you trust the signal, if you allow the coherence to build, if you match that internal steadiness with your own stillness and alignment, collapse accelerates. The probability strengthens, the timeline solidifies, reality begins rearranging itself in micro ways that eventually become macro changes. But if you panic, if you interpret the calm as stagnation, if you mistake the stillness for nothing happening, if you rush out and try to force the outcome through frantic action or desperate seeking of external confirmation, you introduce interference. And interference in the quantum field does exactly what it does with any wave. It disrupts the pattern. It reintroduces fluctuation. It scatters the very coherence that was building toward your breakthrough. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanics of wave collapse applied to consciousness. Coherence collapses probability into reality. Interference delays it, and your internal state is either contributing coherence or generating interference in every single moment. Think about the last time your life changed in a truly meaningful way. Not a small adjustment, but a real shift, a transformation that altered the trajectory of everything that followed. Before it happened, before the external evidence appeared, there was likely a period that felt different from anything you could explain. You were not more excited. You were not more anxious. You were more clear. Quieter inside. Less reactive. Things that used to consume your attention suddenly felt less important. Conversations that used to trigger you passed through you without sticking. Decisions that once paralyzed you felt simpler, not because the circumstances changed, but because something in your perception shifted. You were not trying harder. You were sensing deeper. And sensing deeper is exactly what happens when internal noise decreases and coherence rises. That period, that quiet phase before the visible shift, was not empty. It was the most active phase of the entire transformation. It was the phase where probability was converging, where the wave function was stabilizing, where your nervous system was recalibrating to match a new trajectory. And your intuition was amplifying because it was detecting all of this in real time. But most people do not recognize that phase for what it is. They think nothing is happening. They get impatient. They start pushing. They start doubting. They reintroduce the very noise that was finally clearing. And the shift that was inches away from collapsing into their reality gets pushed back. Not because it was not real, not because they were not ready, but because they did not understand what the silence meant. I want to hear from you on this. Have you experienced that quiet phase before a major shift in your life? That period where everything felt still, but something deep inside you knew change was coming? Share that experience in the comments below. So let me tell you what the silence means. When your life gets quieter before a shift, it is not because the universe has forgotten you. It is because the universe is concentrating. Energy is being withdrawn from scattered possibilities and redirected toward a single convergent trajectory. The noise of competing timelines is decreasing because one timeline is winning. One probability is gaining dominance, and as it gains dominance, the static fades, the mental chatter reduces, the obsessive need to control relaxes. Not because you gave up, because your system recognized, at a level deeper than thought, that what is coming does not require force. It requires reception. It requires you to become still enough, coherent enough, aligned enough to receive what is already organizing itself around you. This is the activation of your quantum GPS. It is not something you turn on through effort. It is something that turns on when you stop generating so much interference that it cannot function. Your guidance system has always been operational. It has always been manipulating the field. It has always been detecting convergence and sending you signals about where your reality is leaning. But you could not hear it over the noise. The noise of old identity, the noise of chronic stress, the noise of other people's expectations, the noise of a nervous system locked in survival mode, scanning for threats instead of detecting possibilities. Let me take you deeper into the neuroscience of this, because understanding what is happening in your brain during this phase will give you the confidence to trust the process instead of fighting it. In a normal stress state, your brain operates primarily in high beta wave patterns. High beta is fast, reactive, narrowly focused. It is the frequency of survival. When you are in chronic high beta, your amygdala is hyperactive, your prefrontal cortex is suppressed, and your perception narrows to threat detection. In this state, you cannot access intuition because your system is too busy protecting you from imagined dangers to detect emerging possibilities. But when a new identity begins stabilizing, when old patterns start losing their emotional charge, something remarkable happens neurologically. The amygdala calms, prefrontal regulation increases. Your brain begins shifting from high beta dominance toward alpha wave states. Alpha is the bridge frequency. It sits between the analytical processing of beta and the deep subconscious access of theta. Alpha is where conscious awareness meets unconscious knowing. It is the state where you can think clearly and feel deeply at the same time. It is the frequency of relaxed alertness, of open awareness, of the kind of perception that notices connections your analytical mind would miss entirely. And as alpha strengthens, theta becomes more accessible. Theta is even deeper. It is the frequency of emotional memory reconsolidation, of deep insight, of the kind of knowing that arrives whole and complete without any logical steps preceding it. Theta is where intuition lives in its purest form. Research on heart-brain coherence shows that when the heart rhythm becomes smooth and ordered, when the interval between heartbeats becomes consistent and harmonious, communication between the heart and brain synchronizes. The heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. And when that information is coherent, cognitive clarity improves, emotional stability increases, and the entire system shifts into a state of internal order. Internal order increases sensitivity to subtle signals. This is not esoteric language dressed up as science. This is measurable, reproducible, documented physiology. When your system becomes coherent, you literally become a better antenna. You detect signals that were always present, but previously drowned out by your own internal static. Imagine tuning a radio. If there is interference everywhere, if the dial is between stations, all you hear is noise. But the music was always broadcasting. The signal was always there. When you tune the dial precisely, when interference drops, the melody becomes unmistakable. That is what is happening inside you right before a quantum shift. The dial is tuning. The interference is dropping. And the signal, the intuitive signal that has been broadcasting your next trajectory, becomes so clear that you can no longer pretend you do not hear it. Now I want you to pause with this for a moment. Not intellectually, physically. Take a breath right now, a slow one. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw relax. Feel the weight of your body wherever you are sitting or standing. Because what I am describing is not something that happens to other people. It is happening to you. Right now. The fact that you are here, listening to these words, absorbing this specific information at this specific moment, is not coincidence. Your system guided you here because it is in the process of reorganizing. Something in your field is converging. A probability is strengthening. And your intuition brought you to this exact point because it is trying to show you something you have been too noisy to see. So let the noise drop. Just for these next few minutes, let the analytical mind rest. Let the doubt take a back seat and feel what is actually present underneath all the thinking. There is something there, something steady, something that does not need proof because it is proof. That steadiness you feel, however faint, however subtle, that is coherence. That is your quantum GPS online and transmitting. And the more you trust it, the louder it gets. Let us go even deeper now into what exactly your intuition is detecting when it amplifies before a shift. Because this is where the mystical and the mechanical become indistinguishable. In quantum physics, what we call reality is not solid until it collapses. Before collapse, there are overlapping waves of potential outcomes existing simultaneously. These waves are not metaphors. They are mathematical descriptions of how reality operates at its most fundamental level. Every possible version of the next moment exists as a probability wave. Most of those waves are weak, incoherent, unlikely to manifest. But some begin gaining amplitude. They become more internally consistent. Their informational structure stabilizes, and as they stabilize, they begin exerting what we might call gravitational influence on the surrounding field. Not physical gravity, but informational gravity. They begin pulling related patterns toward themselves. Events start aligning. Circumstances begin shifting in micro ways. The external world starts leaning in a direction that matches the strengthening probability. And your nervous system, embedded in this field, participating in this informational exchange every moment of every day, detects that lean. It feels the gravitational pull of the converging timeline, and it translates that detection into the only language it has available for communicating with your conscious mind. Feeling, knowing, intuition. So when you feel that quiet certainty that something is about to change, you are not making it up. You are detecting a real shift in the probability structure of your immediate future. Your body is reading the field and telling you, in the clearest way it can, that convergence is happening, that a new trajectory is gaining dominance, that the wave is about to collapse. And all it needs from you is coherence. All it needs is for you to stop introducing interference long enough for the pattern to complete itself. This is why the people who experience the most profound quantum shifts in their lives are rarely the ones who tried the hardest. They are the ones who became the stillest. Not passive, not inactive. Still. There is a profound difference. Passivity is giving up. Stillness is tuning in. Passivity says nothing matters. Stillness says everything matters so much that I refuse to contaminate it with my noise. The quantum field does not respond to effort. It responds to coherence. And coherence is not something you do. It is something you become when you stop doing everything that disrupts it. Every time you force an outcome, you generate interference. Every time you obsessively check for signs, you scatter your signal. Every time you ask someone else to validate what you already know inside, you weaken the very frequency that was guiding you. Not because asking questions is wrong, but because the energy behind the asking matters. If you are asking from curiosity, that is expansion. If you are asking from doubt, that is interference. And the field knows the difference because the field is not reading your words. It is reading your frequency, your electromagnetic output, the coherence or incoherence of your internal state, and it responds accordingly. While we have explored the mechanics of coherence and intuitive amplification today, what I have shared here only touches the surface. If you are ready to go deeper into the complete system of moving from unconscious transmission to conscious broadcasting, from survival static to heart-brain coherence, my book Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness, Mastery walks you through all 9 master frequencies and the step-by-step practices for becoming the signal rather than just receiving it. It is linked in the pinned comment below. What is one pattern or belief you know your intuition has been telling you to release but you have been holding on to out of familiarity? Be honest with yourself and share it in the comments. Sometimes naming it is the first step to letting it go. Here is where this becomes practical. Here is where understanding transforms into activation, because knowing about quantum shifts intellectually changes nothing. Embodying the state that allows them to collapse into your reality changes everything. So let me walk you through what activation actually looks like. Not as a concept, but as a lived experience you can practice right now and every day from this point forward. The first element of activation is recognition. You must learn to recognize the signal for what it is. When intuition amplifies, when you feel that strange clarity, when old patterns lose their charge, when the noise decreases and a quiet knowing emerges, recognize it. Do not dismiss it. Do not explain it away. Do not wait for external proof before you take it seriously. The proof comes after the trust, not before. This is the fundamental inversion that separates people who experience quantum shifts from people who spend their entire lives waiting for them. The old paradigm says, see it, then believe it. The quantum paradigm says, cohere with it, then watch it collapse into form. Recognition means catching the signal in real time. It means noticing when your body feels unexpectedly calm about something your mind says should be stressful. It means paying attention when a decision feels simple, even though the circumstances are complex. It means honoring the moments when you know something without knowing how you know it. Those moments are not glitches, they are transmissions. And every time you recognize one, you strengthen the channel. You tell your system that you are listening. And a system that knows it is being listened to transmits more clearly. The second element is regulation. Your nervous system must be in a state that allows coherence. This is non-negotiable. You cannot access quantum intuition from a state of chronic stress. You cannot detect subtle signals when your amygdala is screaming about threats that do not exist. Regulation is not about being calm all the time. It is about having the capacity to return to coherence when you drift from it. Breath is the fastest pathway. Slow, deliberate breathing with an extended exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It shifts your brain from high beta toward alpha. It smooths your heart rhythm. It creates the internal conditions where intuition can be heard. Practice this not as a technique, but as a way of being. Throughout your day, notice when your breathing becomes shallow and fast. Notice when your jaw tightens. Notice when your thoughts begin racing. These are signs that you have drifted into incoherence. And in that state, your quantum GPS cannot function. It is like trying to use a navigation system while driving through a tunnel. The signal is there, but you have moved into a zone where reception is blocked. Regulation brings you back into open signal territory. It clears the tunnel. It restores reception. And the moment reception returns, the guidance resumes. It was never gone. You just could not hear it. The third element is release. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive and the most essential. Before a quantum shift can collapse into your reality, the old probability must lose coherence. The old timeline must release its grip. And that means you must release your grip on it. This is where people struggle most because the old timeline is familiar. Even when it is painful, even when it is limiting, even when you know intellectually that it no longer serves you, it is known. And the nervous system is wired to prefer the known over the unknown because the known feels predictable and predictability feels safe. But safety and growth do not live at the same frequency. The quantum shift you are approaching requires you to release identification with who you have been in order to become coherent with who you are becoming. This does not mean rejecting your past. It means withdrawing emotional fuel from patterns that no longer match your emerging trajectory. Notice what you are still holding on to that your intuition has already told you to release. A relationship that drains you. A belief about yourself that contradicts what you are growing into. A habit that served the old identity but disrupts the new one. A need for control that masks a fear of the unknown. These are not just psychological patterns. They are energetic anchors to a probability that is losing coherence. And as long as you feed them with attention and emotional energy, you maintain a split signal. Part of you is coherent with the new timeline. Part of you is still broadcasting the old one. And a split signal does not collapse cleanly. It fluctuates, it delays, it creates the frustrating experience of almost shifting but never quite arriving. Release is how you unify the signal, not by fighting the old patterns, but by simply withdrawing your investment in them, letting them exist without feeding them, observing them without identifying with them, allowing them to fade as you redirect your coherence toward what is emerging. This is not suppression. Suppression is pushing something down with force. Release is opening your hands and letting what no longer belongs fall away naturally. And when you release, something extraordinary happens. The energy that was maintaining the old probability becomes available. It redistributes. It flows toward the strengthening timeline, and the convergence accelerates. The fourth element is resonance. Once you have recognized the signal, regulated your nervous system, and released the old patterns, you enter a state of resonance with the emerging probability. Resonance is when your internal frequency matches the frequency of what is trying to manifest. And resonance is not something you manufacture. It is something that happens naturally when interference is removed. Think about two tuning forks. When you strike one, the other begins vibrating at the same frequency without being touched. Not because it is trying to, because the conditions allow it. When you remove interference from your system, when you stop generating noise through doubt and force and chronic stress, you naturally begin resonating with the probability that is most coherent with your evolving identity. You do not have to figure out what the new timeline looks like. You do not have to visualize it perfectly. You do not have to affirm it into existence. You simply have to become coherent enough that resonance occurs on its own. And when it does, the shift is no longer something you are waiting for. It is something you are living into. Moment by moment. Breath by breath. Decision by decision. Each choice made from coherence rather than chaos. Each step taken from knowing rather than forcing. Each day lived from the quiet certainty that your system is aligned with something real, something convergent, something that is already organizing itself into form around you. This is what it means to activate your quantum GPS. It is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing state of receptive coherence where you trust the signal, regulate your system, release what no longer matches, and allow resonance to guide you toward the collapse point. And the collapse point is not a destination. It is a threshold. A moment where accumulated coherence reaches critical mass and probability becomes reality, where the wave function resolves and the life you have been sensing, the one your intuition has been pointing toward, the one that felt real before it was visible, materializes in your physical experience. Not because you forced it, because you became coherent enough to allow it. Now let me address something that might be arising in you right now. A question, perhaps even a doubt. You might be thinking, but what if I am wrong? What if what I am feeling is not intuition, but wishful thinking? What if I trust this signal and it leads nowhere? What if I release the old and the new never arrives? This is the voice of the old identity, and I do not say that to dismiss it. I say it because recognizing that voice for what it is might be the most important thing you do in this entire process. The old identity does not want to be released. It has been running your system for years, maybe decades. It has built an entire reality around itself. And now that a new probability is gaining coherence, the old identity feels the threat. Not a physical threat, an existential one. Because if the new timeline collapses, the old identity loses its position as the dominant operating system. And so it does what any threatened system does. It generates doubt. It asks for proof. It demands certainty before it will allow movement. But here is what you must understand. The old identity will never give you permission to leave it behind. It will never, yes, go ahead, I am ready to dissolve. That is not how identity works. Identity preserves itself. It is designed to. So waiting for the doubt to disappear before you trust your intuition is waiting for permission from the very thing that needs to be transcended. This is the paradox of quantum shifting. The proof comes after the trust. The evidence appears after the coherence. The external confirmation arrives after the internal commitment. Not before. Never before. Because collapse requires coherence, and coherence requires trust, and trust means moving forward without the safety net of certainty. But here is what makes this less terrifying than it sounds. You are not trusting blindly. You are trusting a signal that has specific characteristics. And those characteristics are distinguishable from wishful thinking if you know what to look for. Wishful thinking is emotionally charged. It spikes. It fluctuates. It feels urgent and desperate and attached to a specific outcome. It says, I need this to happen or I will not be okay. Intuition is steady. It persists without urgency. It returns without drama. It feels like quiet knowing rather than emotional wanting. It does not attach to a specific form. It points toward a direction, a frequency, a quality of experience rather than demanding exact circumstances. Wishful thinking comes from lack. Intuition comes from alignment. Wishful thinking generates tension. Intuition generates peace. Wishful thinking needs external validation. Intuition is self-confirming. Learn to feel the difference. It is subtle at first, but it becomes unmistakable with practice. And once you can reliably distinguish between the two, you will never again doubt the signal when it appears, because you will recognize it not by its content, but by its quality. Not by what it says, but by how it feels in your body. Steady, grounded, clear, present, calm, certain without being rigid, open without being scattered. That is intuition. That is your quantum GPS transmitting coordinates for your next evolution. And here is something else that happens when you begin trusting this signal consistently. Synchronicities begin clustering, not in the dramatic, fireworks everywhere way that social media portrays. In a quieter, more precise way. Conversations align with what you have been contemplating. Information arrives exactly when you need it. Opportunities appear that you did not seek, but that fit perfectly with the direction your intuition has been pointing. Timing shifts. Things that used to feel forced begin flowing. Doors that were closed begin opening, not all at once, but in a sequence that makes sense only in retrospect. These are not magical events. They are indicators of probability convergence. When a new timeline gains dominance, the external world begins adjusting in micro ways long before the macro shift is visible. Small things rearrange first. Details shift. The texture of your daily experience changes subtly. And if you are paying attention, if your system is coherent enough to notice, you see the trail of breadcrumbs that the emerging probability is leaving for you. Each synchronicity is a data point. Each aligned conversation is confirmation. Each unexpected opening is evidence that the wave function is approaching collapse. And your job is not to chase these signs. Your job is to remain coherent enough that they continue appearing, because they appear in proportion to your coherence. More coherence, more convergence, more convergence, more synchronicity, more synchronicity, more confirmation. More confirmation, more trust. More trust, more coherence. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle, a feedback loop of increasing alignment that accelerates the collapse of the very reality your intuition has been detecting. But let me be clear about something. This process has a shadow side that must be addressed honestly. The period before a quantum shift, the phase where old patterns are dissolving and new ones have not yet solidified, can feel deeply uncomfortable. Not because something is wrong, because you are in between. You are in the liminal space, the threshold, the gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And that gap can feel like emptiness, like loss, like confusion, like a strange grief for a version of yourself that is fading even though you chose to let it go. This is normal. This is necessary. And this is where most people turn back. They feel the discomfort of the in-between, and they interpret it as a sign that they made a mistake. They feel the emptiness where the old identity used to be, and they panic, rushing to fill it with anything familiar. Old habits, old relationships, old thought patterns, anything to escape the vulnerability of not yet knowing who they are becoming. But the in-between is not a mistake. It is the birth canal. It is the space where transformation actually occurs. It is the quantum void, the field of pure potential that exists between one collapsed reality and the next. And if you can learn to be present in that space without rushing to fill it, without collapsing back into the old pattern out of fear, something remarkable happens. The void becomes generative. The emptiness becomes creative. the not knowing becomes the most fertile ground you have ever stood on. Because in that space, free from the constraints of old identity, new possibilities can emerge that you could never have imagined from within the old framework. Possibilities that your previous self would not have had the perceptual bandwidth to even conceive of, let alone receive. So if you are in that space right now, if you are feeling the strange combination of clarity and uncertainty, of knowing and not knowing, of calm and discomfort, let me tell you something. You are not lost. You are in transit. You are between stations. The old signal has faded, and the new one is tuning in. And the static you hear in between is not failure. It is frequency adjustment. Stay with it. Breathe through it. Trust the process that your own coherence initiated, because the shift is not coming. The shift is here. It is happening in this very moment, in the space between your breaths, in the quiet beneath your thoughts, in the steadiness that persists even when your mind generates doubt. The wave is collapsing. The probability is converging, and your quantum GPS is not malfunctioning. It is recalculating for a destination so far beyond your current coordinates that the route looks unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It means new. And new is exactly what you asked for when you decided that the old reality was no longer enough. Consider coming back to this video each morning for the next few days and letting it reset your coherence before the noise of the day begins. Or send it to someone you know who is in that quiet, in-between phase right now. When you share this understanding with someone whose system's ready to receive it, you create a ripple of coherence that strengthens both your signal and theirs, accelerating convergence for everyone involved. Let me offer you a practice now, not a concept to think about, but an experience to move through. Something you can do right now and return to whenever you need to recalibrate your signal. Close your eyes if you are able to. If not, soften your gaze. Let your vision go slightly unfocused. Take 3 slow breaths. On each exhale, let your body release whatever tension it is holding. Do not try to relax. Just allow. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the contact points where you meet the surface beneath you. Now bring your attention to the center of your chest. Not your thoughts about your chest. The actual felt sensation in that area. There may be warmth. There may be pressure. There may be openness. There may be nothing at first. Stay with it. Breathe into that space, and as you breathe, ask one simple question. Not with your mind, with your whole body. Where am I being guided? Do not look for an answer. Do not try to manufacture a response. Just hold the question like you would hold a candle in a dark room. Gently, patiently, without needing it to illuminate everything at once. And notice what arises. It may be a word. It may be an image. It may be a feeling. It may be a direction, not geographic, but energetic. A sense of toward this or away from that. Whatever comes, do not judge it. Do not analyze it. Simply receive it. This is your quantum GPS transmitting. This is the signal that has been there all along, waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. And the more you practice this, the more you return to this space of receptive coherence, the stronger the signal becomes. Not because the transmission is changing, because your reception is improving. You are becoming a cleaner antenna, a more coherent receiver. And coherent receivers do not just detect signals, they accelerate collapse. They become active participants in the materialization of the very reality they are sensing. This is the truth that most people miss about manifestation, about quantum shifting, about transformation of any kind. It is not about getting something from out there and bringing it in here. It is about becoming so coherent in here that out there reorganizes to match. The external world is not the source. It is the mirror, and mirrors do not change until the thing they are reflecting changes first. You are the thing. Your coherence is the change, and your intuition is the confirmation that the reflection is about to update. So here is what I want you to carry with you from this moment forward. The next time you feel that quiet knowing, the next time your intuition amplifies without logical reason, the next time old patterns suddenly lose their grip and a strange clarity settles over your perception, do not dismiss it. Do not override it. Do not wait for someone else to confirm what your entire system is already telling you. Recognize it. Regulate your nervous system to support it. Release what no longer matches, and allow resonance to do what resonance does. Let the tuning forks align. Let the wave converge. Let the probability collapse. Not through force, through coherence, not through effort, through alignment, not through believing harder, through becoming stiller. Your quantum shift will activate when you do this. Not this as in one specific action, this as in this state, this coherence, this trust, this willingness to let your internal GPS guide you even when the route does not match the map your old identity drew. The map was never the territory. Your intuition always was. And if you are feeling something right now, if there is a resonance in your body as you hear these words, if something in you is quietly saying, yes, I know this is true, that is not emotion. That is recognition. That is your system confirming that what you are hearing matches what it has been trying to tell you. Honor that. Let it land. Let it settle into your cells and your breath and your bones, because that recognition is not the beginning of your shift. It is the evidence that your shift has already begun. The wave is collapsing. The probability is converging. And you, sitting here right now, breathing, listening, feeling, are exactly where your quantum GPS intended you to be. Not by accident, by coherence, not by chance, by convergence, not someday. Now. If this resonated with something you have or been feeling, if it gave language to a process you sensed but could not name, leave a single word in the comments. Whatever word arose during that practice, whatever your system transmitted when you asked where you are being guided, drop that word below. Not for me, for you. Because externalizing the signal strengthens it. Speaking what you know makes it more coherent. And coherence, as you now understand, is what collapses possibility into reality. Subscribe if you want to continue tuning this frequency. Share this with someone who is in their own quiet phase, who might be mistaking their shift for stagnation. And remember, the signal was never absent. You were just finally quiet enough to hear it. Stay coherent. The collapse is closer than you think. Now, if you are ready to understand the hidden mechanics that govern how this coherence interacts with the fabric of reality itself, go watch the 5 hidden laws of reality. You're using them wrong right now, where you will discover the exact principles your quantum GPS is operating on and how to stop unknowingly working against them.